Ladies and gentlemen, he is here. Please welcome the one, the only, Nigel Farage.
Hello, Sydney. Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. It's great to be back at CPAC Australia. Now, the last time I was here, I got myself into some considerable trouble. Not that that's particularly unusual, of course, but this was at the dinner, and there were questions coming from the audience, and I was asked a couple of questions about the royal family. I was asked about Prince Charles's political activism. I was asked whether he'd make a good king. I was asked about the constitutional future of Australia with the British monarch as head of state. And I was way ahead of the pack. I said that I thought Meghan Markle would prove to be a complete and utter disaster for the royal family, that Prince Harry was actually now the Prince of Woke, and various other comments I made about members of the royal family. And I got to Heathrow Airport 25 hours later to be met by photographers, and I was on the front page of 6 national newspapers. Farage calls his royal outrage. Well, I'm pleased to say I was absolutely right about Harry and Meghan. I was just ahead of the pack. But of course, in the last few weeks, we have seen the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, somebody who served for 70 years faultlessly. The United Kingdom, the realms, the Commonwealth, 70 years of selfless service, of dedication, of Christianity, of patriotism, of duty. And not once in 70 years was there a single scandal. But then her children have more than made up for that. And there are big questions to be asked in Australia about the future. I'm not here to tell you what you should do. But what I can tell you is that over the course of the last few weeks, as millions of people have descended upon London, I've seen something quite remarkable. I've actually seen the values that the Queen represented now becoming discussed again. We're actually talking about Christianity again. We're talking about a constitutional monarchy. We're talking about our history. Something very, very special and magical has happened. And I think the monarchy in the United Kingdom is now safer than it's ever been. But it's not for me to tell you what to do. If you wish to replace the magic of a constitutional monarch who rises above party politics, who doesn't get involved in political issues, and King Charles has promised to leave behind some of his previous slightly odd thoughts. No, it's not for me to tell you what to do. If you want to replace the magic of that with a dreary republic, headed up in Puritan style by a clapped-out Australian politician who won't be liked by half the country and probably isn't liked by half of those in his own party. No, if you think Malcolm Turnbull But as I say, it's not for me to tell you what to think. And you can easily and confidently make up your own mind. Now, I've been a regular at CPAC for over a decade, attending every single year in America, apart, of course, from COVID, when much of the world, or many world governments, appeared to go mad. Although in the case of Australia, almost completely insane. I mean, I wonder whether anybody would ever be allowed back into the country. And the sight of the new Berlin Wall that was built between Queensland and New South Wales just shows you the length to which politicians will go to take power from us, the individual, to take away from us the concept of our own responsibility in life, and to put it all at the center. What is important, I think, about CPAC, about these debates, about the great cultural battles that we are engaged in, is that we believe in democracy. We believe in a nation state. We believe in the family. We believe in the Judeo-Christian culture that has underpinned everything our societies are about. But above all, we believe in free speech, because we believe it's those values that those that went before us, and I was honored to go to your war memorial in Canberra last week, just the most extraordinary place. We believe in free, open debate. We believe we can win the battle of ideas. But what we are up against, and what has been propagated through our education systems, is that another side on the left who want to close down debate. Now, did you see the protesters outside earlier? Well, I thought I would attempt to engage them. In civilized debate, and this took place exactly 1 hour ago. Take a look.
Welcoming the CPAC conference, letting you know that people like yourself...
And using foul language.
People like yourself...
Using foul language.
Racist, Islamophobics, anti-queer...
Is that... Because you haven't got an argument.
Our argument is that fascists aren't welcome here.
I see.
That's our face
as you're so
here in
intellectual, define a fascist for me.
Far-right scum like yourself, racist, anti-queer, people who want to organise as the far-right, people who want to have conferences like this where you can talk about how you're going to smash women's rights.
Have you been in the conference?
No, I haven't been inside the conference. I was outside on the streets, standing with ordinary people against people like you.
You're not listening. Are you capable?
Below inflation.
Are you capable of having an argument?
I mean, what's the argument? That we should let people like yourself who want to blame refugees...
People like you who talk about discrimination, who talk about prejudice, actually, you're the ones with the prejudice. You can't have a debate with me without swearing. Being abusive.
I don't care about swearing.
Of course you don't. Of course you don't. No, of course you don't. Because you don't actually have an argument. Are you morally superior?
We think that ordinary people should be standing up to people like you, people from the far right, people who claim ordinary...
You can't tell me why.
Because you're trying to cohere a movement that will take away the rights of some of the most oppressed in society. Do you think that the virus is some joke? Do you think that it's something not...
No, it's a very good excuse for government to limit our freedoms. Look, I respect your right to have a different opinion. All right? Yeah. I completely respect your right to do that.
Here to heckle you, we're here to protest the CPAC conference. I'm not here to have a debate with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not here to have a debate. I think you should get out of Sydney. Racist, bigots, anti-queer, fascists are not welcome here. Racist, bigots, anti-queer, fascists are not welcome here.
Genuine mental health. Genuine mental health. Well, now that is what we're up against. And that cretin is not alone. There are loads of them, and they're being pumped out of our educational establishments in very, very large numbers. In fact, they're able, not just through the education system, but through much of media as well, to pursue a narrative that attempts to close down our side of the debate. We know what we're up against. We know what they want. They are trying to divide us. They are trying to bring down everything Western civilization has ever stood for. They want, and they do it, of course, through organizations like Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. We're all supposed to take the knee and bow down before them. The only person I'd take the knee for is King Charles III, I can assure you. But you must decide your own future for yourself. I'm trying to make a serious point here. But what is happening now is we're telling 8-year-old kids, if you're white, you are guilty. You are an oppressor. You should be ashamed of your family, your history, your country, your culture. And if you're 8 years old and you're black, you're a victim. And the world owes you something. Do we think any of this is going to bring our society together? Do we think any of this honors what Martin Luther King said in that incredible speech known as I Have a Dream, in which he said, one day I have a dream that my 4 children will be judged not by their color of their skin, but by the content of their character. We are allowing people to be divided. So we know what the left want to do. But let me share with you today what I think the problem is and why they've been able to make such astonishing advances through our civilization and society, and why so much now is at stake. It is, frankly, because of conservative cowardice. The failure of politicians to stand up. The failure of politicians to confront. And it happens on cultural issues. It happens on social issues. It happens on economic issues, and it doesn't work. Just think of my country, the United Kingdom. A British Conservative Party that was totally and utterly opposed to Brexit. Totally and utterly opposed to us getting back our birthright of being independent, free, democratic, choosing our own friends in the world, like Australia and, hey, the AUKUS deal we've done with you, where you're going to replace 1950s diesel French submarine technology with brand new, beautiful British nuclear submarines. Is a very good example of what we're about. And even when we had voted Brexit, the British Conservative Party, through Theresa May, attempted to put through, frankly, a treacherous, virtually treasonous Brexit agreement, and I had to come back for a second time into politics and smash them to pieces in the European elections of 2019. And I think Theresa May resigning after the polls had closed, but before the results had been declared, with the Conservatives having achieved their worst result in 200 years, I think for me, getting rid of Theresa May as Prime Minister is one of my proudest ever achievements. But even then they messed it up. Even then, when I'd opened the door for them, when Boris became Prime Minister and got elected with an 80-seat majority, the biggest majority since Margaret Thatcher, even then, elected as Conservatives, they governed as Social Democrats and took us down the road of net zero, of fuel poverty, of deindustrialization of our country, and refusing to be independent in energy. This is what Conservatives have been doing in country after country. Boris, it would appear, was very, very manipulated by his new wife. Carrie Antoinette is her name. Now, I've been here in Australia now for a week, and I've been to Melbourne. I've been, as I said, to Canberra. I know Canberra's awful, but the War Museum's all right. It's just the people that go there every week to try and run Australia that are the problem. And I've been up to Brisbane, and I've been here in Sydney, and I've spoken to many, many audiences. But the single most important, interesting thing in this trip is that everywhere I've been having breakfast in the hotel. I've been, in the airport lounges. I've been out in bar after bar. Doing my research, you understand. And everywhere I go, ordinary, decent Australians are coming up to me and saying, we're worried about the future of our country. We're worried about what Australia is becoming. And we cannot believe the lack of conservative courage and leadership. And I tell you something, this country feels to me today exactly as the UK felt 10 years ago. 10 years ago, people feeling not just betrayed by the Conservative Party, but betrayed by everybody as increasingly it was clear we couldn't control our borders, we couldn't run our country because some unelected bureaucrats in Brussels were doing that. And our campaign to get our independence back was along the lines of, we want our country back. And what Australians are saying to me this week is the same thing. We want Australia back because otherwise we're going to lose it. So you as activists must use your power. Use your power to make sure you get a better set of conservative politicians than you've currently got. All the time, in every capital city, people elected on conservative tickets get influenced by big business, get influenced by the groupthink that happens in Parliament, get influenced by mainstream media, by social media, and they're afraid of being criticized. They're afraid of being criticized because, frankly, in Australia, as is the case elsewhere, you've got too many people in politics who are there because they want a job, who are there because they want a career, not there out of conviction, not there out of belief. And the reason why events like this are so powerful is it brings us together. It makes us realize, folks, we are not on our own. We are part of something bigger. And if I urge just one thing, it is that after this event, you go back to where you live and you determine that you will become a foot soldier in this movement. You have more power individually than any of you think sitting there right now, because we can talk about social media, we can talk about all these things, but actually the single most important form of engagement is face-to-face. You can talk to people at the local shop, outside the school gate, in the bar, at church, whatever it is, but use your power of communication and make sure that when it comes to candidate selection, you're doing your best to get people who will actually stand up and fight. Because here's the thing, when conservatives actually do stand up and fight, when they do take a moral stand, yes, a moral stand, because that is what this is all about. It's about our values, it's about our freedoms, it's about our traditions, it's about what our forebears built. And this message is identical in Australia, America, the United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, right across the English-speaking world. We face exactly the same challenges. So please use that power. Get people who are better and stronger to represent you. And you know what? If you do, something remarkable will happen. You will actually start winning elections again. You'll win elections again. Because if the National Liberal Party decide to go down the road of Labour light, if they decide they want to win back the Teals, you'll lose the next election by an even bigger margin than you lost the last election. It's as simple as that. There is a big shift. There is a big class change. Conservative parties now are increasingly becoming the parties of working people as opposed to the parties of the privileged. You know, the spoilt, overeducated rich kids that live in wealthy suburbia that have moved, and it could be southwest London, it could be Alexandria outside DC, or your wealthier suburbs here in Sydney, those voters aren't coming back. But there are patriotic, decent people out there who want to get on, advance themselves, work hard, set up their own businesses, and conservative movements need to be the champion for them. And they really do. They really, really do. And that's why, frankly, the only conservative leader in the Western world that I respect at the moment, the only conservative leader that doesn't buckle, doesn't bend, doesn't bow down, but is prepared to take the stick and the criticism, but fights for Western values, is Donald Trump. He's the only one with the guts. And he's woken us up to external threats. He's told us and woken us up with regards to China. and he doesn't get pushed around and bullied by the wokies. And that's why the Democrats are going to get a real beating in 40 days' time in those midterms elections. And I really believe we will see a Republican back in the White House in 2024. As for our Conservative Party, they've let people down so badly since 2019 that it may now be too late for Liz Truss to turn it around, but at least she's trying. At least she put together a budget the other day that cut taxes. How about that, guys? Cut taxes. Giving business incentive, but it's up to you. It's up to you here in Australia what you do. On your current course, you are not going to get Conservatives back in power for a very, very long time. And given the gutlessness and cowardice and frankly, letdown that Scott Morrison was to so many people in this country, they don't deserve to be back in power. But if you get this right, you will be able to win the next election and win it well. I've seen this same pattern all across the Western world. You've got to get rid of the cowards and replace them with fighters and leaders. And Australia, I hope and pray that you do that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm going to have a go at doing some questions and answers. So can we get the lights up, please? And can I see somebody with a microphone who is wandering around? Yes.
Here I am.
Right, who would like to ask some questions? And nothing is off limits.
We have Finola here.
Finola.
Welcome back. It was 2 or 3 years ago I asked you 4 questions. The first one was, what the hell is going on in London with all the stabbings? And you said, the mayor. What has changed since you've been here? And also, you've been straddling the Atlantic. So you're seeing both sides of the coin. What is going to emerge in the next 6 months, say?
Okay. Number one, Sadiq Khan is the mayor of London. He's a complete blooming disaster. He seems to care more about stopping us driving our motor cars or putting speed cameras up everywhere to stop us doing more than 20 mph than he does about growing knife crime. Unfortunately, he gets re-elected every time because there is something called the early postal vote, which is open to complete and utter manipulation, and election integrity really, really matters. What has changed here? I'll be honest with you, a lot. I think lockdown has woken many Australians up to the fact that politics can interfere with their lives in the most extraordinary way, and a country that traditionally had quite a high level of political apathy, because people lived in Australia, loved the big outdoors, were happy, unimpeded in their lives. Now, the feeling now that government is simply getting too big, I think that's very strong. But the main difference I see, coming back after 3 years, is this increased level of fear. People who took for granted the Australian way of life, now see that as being under threat. They see attempts to divide this country. And I would suggest to you that Albanese's proposal for the voice would do exactly what I talked about earlier via Black Lives Matter. If you give one racial group in this country superior rights to everybody else, you're heading down a very, very dangerous and very difficult path. So increased fear in Australia is what I see. And to ask me to predict the next 6 months and what's going to happen, well, look, I don't know. All I would say is that this disease of cancel culture, this disease of divide, is worse in America than it is in Australia, than it is in the United Kingdom. And I fear, genuinely fear, for the future of America and American cities unless the right values can prevail. And that's why I'm a Donald Trump supporter, because he's got the guts to fight and win this great cultural war. Thank you.
Our next question is from Eric.
Nigel, long time since Dalrymple's book signing. Question is, we've seen Liz Truss backflip on several issues. Like, for example, I noticed you wrote something rather critical of her a few days ago. Is she going to come good? I know you said you couldn't predict the next 6 months, but is she going to get energy right, the fundamentals? What are your thoughts?
Look, you know, we have pursued net zero, all right? Which means we deindustrialize. The aluminium smelters close. The refineries close. The chemical plants close. Our steel industry gets moved to India and China. And we have $1 to $2 trillion worth of natural gas under our feet in the north of England. We haven't yet extracted a single barrel. But hey, we've built wind turbines. Isn't that bloody great? And this winter, if we get a bad winter with a big anticyclone sitting over the North Sea, the lights will go out. Think of that in a modern world that is more dependent on electricity than we ever were before with computerization, digitization, and everything else. She has said that she's now open to the idea of fracking for gas. She said we want to become energy independent by 2040. Well, I'm really sorry. I want to be energy independent by the end of 2023. And you have to ask yourself, does she have the guts to do it? On the economy, she's shown some courage. On energy, it's tentative. And on the boats crossing the English Channel every day, with gangs of Albanian criminals openly boasting on TikTok about how they're coming into our country and doing such harm, she hasn't yet shown the guts and resolve to deal with it in the way, can I say, that Tony Abbott did so brilliantly for Australia back in 2012. So Boris has damaged the Conservative brand hugely, let everybody down terribly. And it's a shame, because he had the world at his feet. He just wasn't quite capable of telling the truth, and he never really was actually a Conservative. There are many things about Boris we just don't know, including how many children he's got. So look, I wish Liz Truss well. I mean that. She is our last hope between that and a Labour government that will tax us again and make us even more energy independent, dependent on the rest of the world. I wish her well, but in answering your question, can she do it? I doubt it. I doubt it, but we'll see. Right, I've got a couple more minutes left.
A couple more questions. We have
Yes.
Adam here.
Yes, Adam.
Hi, Nigel. Thank you for coming today. Regarding the EU and Brexit, so I recently attained my EU citizenship, and I see the benefits of using that in order to work and study and around the EU. So to me, Brexit was negative to me if I wanted to go to Britain, for example. So I do understand the reasons behind it.
Why?
I'm sorry, as in, to work and study, it's not as
You're
easy.
very welcome to come and work and study in the United Kingdom with or without Brexit, regardless whether your passport's Australian or Belgium or Spanish. Listen, we've been working across Europe for centuries before the European Union came along. The point about having a British passport as opposed to an EU one is that it gives us the ability to check, in theory, to check who is coming into our country, just as Australia does, just as any normal country does. So look, complete open borders, I think, are irresponsible, play into the hands of criminality, people trafficking, and everything else. Brexit does not close the United Kingdom off to Europe. What it might just do is open us up in a better and more engaging way with the rest of the world. And right at the top of my list, are a group of countries who I think we frankly betrayed in the 70s, and that includes Australia. After Australia's massive contribution to our safety and security, the massive cost Australia paid in 2 world wars, lending us a hand to keep our freedom, what we did to you was dreadful, and with Brexit, we can mend that relationship, and we are beginning to do so. I really believe that.
So just yes, thank you for that. So just regarding the relationship now with the EU, would you say that you're looking for something similar to what Switzerland has with the rest of the EU, and able to you're able to keep your independence, but at the same time reap the benefits from the EU?
Look, there are no benefits with the EU. What we want are good relations with our neighbours and trade with our neighbours. Now, having good relations with the French is a very, very tall order. I mean, it's never been possible. But especially with Macron in the Elysee. They've tried to be vindictive towards us. They really have tried to punish us. And do you know why? And do you know why Brexit is so hated and why I'm so despised by the global elites? Because the EU is the epicenter of a globalist project. They would like all of you to be part of this project of centralized global government where they make the decisions, where we have no power, and Brexit is the first brick out of the globalist wall. And I will leave you with this thought. There are some that think that the 2016 shocks, the Brexit shock, the Trump shock, there are some that think they were short-term aberrations and that normal globalist service has been resumed. They're wrong. As was evidenced last Sunday in Italy with the victory of a woman who appears to have some real spirit, and I like her style, I must say. Her defense of family values, her defense of Christian culture, her defense of national identity. And I think we're headed for some very, very tough economic times where we'll wake up to the fact that the globalist project suits big businesses, suits the super rich, but is damaging to genuine free market economics and the liberty of ordinary people and their wealth. There is huge, convulsive political change coming right across the Western world, and you in Australia should be part of it. You in Australia need to be part of it. You in Australia can be part of it. What I've seen going around the country, your people are crying out for it. Just get some better, stronger, more decent, conservative leaders, and you'll be part of that revolution too. Thank you very much.